All right, welcome everybody to our monthly Unchained Capital Vaults Continuing Education webinar series. My name is Justine Harper. I'm the VP of Concierge here, and I am joined today by David Layton, our Director of Concierge, and then we have Tom Honzik, our Technical Director of Concierge. He is our newest member of the Concierge team, and this is his first webinar. He's going to be helping you guys walk through some key checks in a little bit, so make sure you say hello to him in the chat box there. Speaking of chat boxes, make sure you have the chat box and the Q&A box open on the bottom of your Zoom window. The beauty of these webinars is that they are designed for you guys to be able to ask live questions and get answers from the team here. David's going to be monitoring that chat box today. So just make sure that you are dropping them in there, and we will be monitoring them and answering them throughout the webinar, but we'll also have about 20 to 30 minutes at the end to go through as many as we can. So for today's topic, we're going to be going over key checks, key replacements, and collaborative signature requests. So we have a lot of content to cover today. We're going to be going over first the introduction and review of key terms. Some terms you're going to hear here on the webinar and also throughout the Bitcoin space often, and just want to make sure you have a firm understanding of those and feel confident in their meaning. Then we're going to go over quarterly key checks, which is something that is specific to our platform. And Tom's going to explain to you what those are and then actually go through how to perform one. Then we're going to do key replacements within your account. What is a key replacement? When do you need to do one? When do you not need to do one? And then I will walk you through what that looks like. And then we're going to go through the process of requesting Unchained to sign a transaction. So perhaps you have access to one key, want to do a withdrawal from your vault, and want Unchained Capital to work as the backup key. We will walk you through how that process works and how to perform one. And then, of course, our live Q&A, which is the reason you guys are all here, right? So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to David, who's going to walk through our key terms.
All right. Thank you, Justine. And as Justine said, we always start these webinars off by going over key terms. So the most important one to understand is Bitcoin address. And I say the most important because a lot of the time, people will think Bitcoin lives on devices or on exchanges, but your Bitcoin lives in addresses on the blockchain. So we have two examples of addresses. One is a single sig over there on the left, which is built with and secured by a single key. On the right is a multi-signature address, which is built with, secured by multiple keys, and you need signatures from multiple keys in order to move Bitcoin out of the address. The balances of addresses it's all completely public, right? When you hear the term public ledger, it's all tracked on the Bitcoin blockchain, which is about 400 gigabyte database right now. I feel like every time we do a webinar, that number grows a little bit, which is a great thing to see. Yeah, it's completely public, if you run a node or connect to an API, you can see all the addresses, all the balances within it. And this is how we are able to confidently verify Bitcoin's supply cap of 21 million. So let's jump over to the next one there. And we'll start an analogy here, kind of a key and lock analogy to help think about some of these terms a little bit more clearly. And a public key can be thought of as a lock to a given address. So public keys are used to build addresses where Bitcoin is deposited. So what is a public key? It's public data generated from a private key. A private key can be thought of as a key. We'll get to that one next. So public data generated from a private key used to construct a single address. And then hardware wallets or hardware devices like Trezor, Cold Card Ledger share public keys with wallet software like Unchained or Trezor.io or some of the other coordinators to build addresses. So that is what a public key does. The next one is a private key. So if public keys are used to build addresses where Bitcoin's deposited, private keys are used to sign transactions, to withdraw or spend from addresses. So you can think of, to continue that analogy, the private key as a key. A single key to an address, hardware wallets know how to use the private key to sign transactions to spend Bitcoin. And each private key has a corresponding individual public key. So private key is the key, public key is the lock. We'll continue on to the next term here, which is the extended public key, or you may have heard the term xpub. So the xpub is if the public key is thought of as a lock, the xpub can be thought of as the master lock. Xpubs can derive nearly infinite individual public keys, and xpubs are shared with wallet software or multisig coordinators to build a series of addresses, which is your wallet. So Bitcoin lives in the address, addresses are within wallets, and the xpub is shared with software in order to build the addresses. All right, so the next term here, continuing the analogy, would be seed phrases or the master key. Okay, so if xpubs are thought of as a master lock, seeds or seed phrases can be thought of as the master key. It is the most important piece of information for you to protect and for you to secure. From a seed phrase, you can restore private keys. Generally, everything starts with the seed phrase. So the most important thing to think about with seed phrases is making sure you secure it physically, having a physical copy, and never taking a picture of it, letting it touch the internet in any way, or sharing it with anyone you wouldn't share access to your Bitcoin with. There's an example of a seed phrase at the bottom there. These are all words that are brought from the same list of 2,048 words that are predetermined. And that those 24 words down there is an example of a 24-word seed phrase. You can also, the last thing I'll say about this, seed phrases or seeds are talked about in a lot of different ways. So if you ever hear mnemonic phrase or mnemonic seed, seed words, backup seed, recovery phrase, BIP39, these are all referring to the seed or this thing that I'm describing here as the master key. All right. So the last thing here is the wallet configuration file. So the wallet configuration file can be thought of as directions to your multisig address. This is something that we show all of our clients how to download and how to store securely. And it could be thought of as, I like to also use the analogy as like the blueprint or fingerprint behind each of your multisig wallets or vaults. And you can take this information and bring it to a external multisig coordinator or software, Caravan being one. The other popular coordinators would be Spectre, Sparrow, Electrum, things like that. And you can restore or rebuild your multi-signature wallet. Now, once you do that, you can see the balances, address history, UTXOs, but you cannot, or a bad actor could not spend Bitcoin. So this file is used to restore your multi-sig wallet externally, but you still need to apply multiple signatures from your keys in order to move Bitcoin out of that address or out of that wallet. And the information within this file, it has the xpubs, it has directions from the seed to the private keys. And that last bullet point there is very important. You always want to secure it behind some layer of encryption, a password manager or encrypted cloud storage for the purpose of being able to access it from multiple devices. What we do here at Unchained, and what you should do as a Bitcoiner, is remove all single points of failure. So you take this file and you want to put it behind encryption, accessible from multiple devices, so that a single hardware, a piece of hardware or hard drive, encrypted or otherwise, is never a single point of failure. All right, and okay, that was the last key term there. We kind of cruised right through that. So that was the review of key terms. As always, that's how we start. Next, what I'm going to do is hand it over to Tom. He's going to cover key checks, specifically what is a key check, why is it important, and how to perform a key check. So as soon as you're ready, Tom, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you, David. So the first thing that I want to cover is what key checks are. So key checks are a feature we've implemented into our platform to encourage the good behavior of periodically making sure your devices are still working properly. You can kind of think of it like a checkup at the doctor's office, but for your Trezor, your Ledger, or your Cold Card. And specifically, what we're trying to accomplish with a key check is verify that your device still holds that private key, which corresponds to the public key that is known by our platform and is used as a part of your vault. Now, in a few minutes, I'll actually be demonstrating how to perform a key check. But first, I want to talk about why they're important. So key checks are important because the fact of the matter is hardware devices are not perfect and they can fail or malfunction. This could happen for a variety of reasons, usually after the device experiences a firmware update, but it might also happen if the device simply hasn't been used in a while. If you haven't touched your device in several months or so, you might then go to plug it in and find it's not working like how it used to. So with key checks, we are trying to detect these possible malfunctions sooner rather than later so that we can work with you to resolve the issue prior to any situation where you really want to use your key on short notice. Next, I'd like to talk about what happens if key checks aren't performed. So on our platform, a key check is considered overdue if one hasn't been performed in over 90 days. So if that amount of time has lapsed, we really want to make sure you still have access to your device and that it's working properly. So our platform will direct you to perform the key check before using that key for anything else, such as constructing a new vault or signing a transaction. Now keep in mind, if you have a device that is overdue for a key check, there isn't necessarily anything wrong with your key or your device at all. The key check feature exists purely on our platform, again, as a precautionary measure. Now, if you're someone who has stored a device in a secure location that is hard to access once every 3 months to perform that 90-day key check, I do want to mention that you have the ability to turn the key check feature off. However, we do recommend against doing this in most cases unless it's absolutely necessary, because like I mentioned earlier, key checks are there for a reason. We really believe they're an important part of properly maintaining a Bitcoin vault. If you do decide to turn the feature off, we encourage you to create your own system of periodically checking your devices. Now here on this next slide, I want to show you what it would look like if you have a key that is overdue for a key check. So what I've done to get to this page here is where it's displaying all my keys with my funky names assigned to them, is I've logged into my Unchained account and I've clicked the word keys within the menu on the left-hand side. The majority of you joining us for this webinar today will probably only have 2 keys displayed here under your account, but it is totally possible to add more keys. And as you can see, in my case, I have 5 keys used for several different vaults. You may notice that 4 of them show up as green, while 1 of them has yellow and red indicators on it. And as you might guess, that's the one that's overdue for a key check. So what I'd want to do here is click the word view towards the bottom of that key. Okay, and once I click that view button, it would take me to this page, which again has red indicators showing me that the key is overdue to be checked. And so now that I've shown you what it looks like when you have a key that hasn't been checked in over 90 days, I'm going to begin sharing my screen to demonstrate the actual key check process. So let me just get that up here. Okay. So here I am logged into my account and I have my key up here. And you may notice that the key check has been performed in the last 90 days for this key. I wanted to take this opportunity to show you that you can perform a key check even before the key is overdue to be checked. So doing so will reset that 90-day countdown. And the process of the key check, which I'm about to demonstrate, is exactly the same as if the key is displaying as overdue. So the first thing that I'd want to do is take my device and plug it in. Once it turns on, I will need to enter my PIN code to unlock it. And I will click this check now button here. So let me get my device plugged in. Okay, and it's powered on. I'm going to enter my PIN. Perfect. Now I'm going to click this check now button. And it brings up this pop-up here. And here you can select which type of device you have. And I'll run through all 3 of them briefly, but the one that we're going to go through the full steps for is the Trezor. That's the device that I'm working with today. So if you have a ledger, you'd of course click here. You would want to unlock your ledger and then open the Bitcoin app. So on the device, you would want to see the words Bitcoin is ready, and then you would be clicking this blue button, connect to ledger. I'm going to back out of this here. If you had a cold card, you'd of course be clicking on this one. Now, cold cards are the most technical of the devices, but it explains the steps to performing a key check with a cold card here. You would need a micro SD card with you. I'm going to back out of this and I'm going to go through the full process for the Trezor today. So I've got my Trezor unlocked here, and I've entered in my PIN code and it's plugged in. So all I need to do is click the Connect to Trezor button. It's going to bring up this new window here, and it's going to ask for permission to export my public key. So if this is a key that you've worked with in the past, that you've already added onto the Unchained platform, you've probably done this before when you originally added the key onto the platform. This is the process for the key check. We're just exporting that public key again to make sure that it matches the one that we already know about. So all I need to do is click the blue button here, allow once for this session. And then I'm going to click the green button, export. It's going to take a couple of seconds here. It will close that window, bring me back here and say success. The key check was successful. So it's a very quick process, less than a minute, just a few clicks. But that's all it takes to do a key check. And it will say here that my key has now last been checked today. And so now I don't necessarily need to do another key check for another few months. And that's really all it takes. So I'm going to now bring the screen back to Justine there. And David, has there been any good questions coming in while I was presenting that?
Yes, yes, there have been a ton of great questions, and Tom, great job there. So as always, we're getting a lot of technical questions and a lot of related and unrelated questions as we're going. About 15 in here, but I want to just take this for a second and answer. We'll do 3 questions. 2 of them are closely related. The first one's very easy. We had a couple of people ask if this info is going to be shared after the call. Yes. So all of these webinars, when we record them live, they're for clients, they're client exclusive, but we take the recording and put it onto our YouTube channel, usually within a few days of the recording. So yes, the webinar and all the information will be shared to YouTube. Somebody had asked about the deck, which is the slides itself. So we don't share that information publicly, but you can always go back and review the YouTube channel, and the video on YouTube is broken up into sections. So if there's something specific that you saw here that you wanted to see again, we have the entire video annotated and broken into sections.
I'm going to add in too. The reason we don't currently is just because it's kind of difficult to do. We have a very exciting thing for you guys next month. So make sure you're here for the continuing education webinar on the first Friday of every month, because we're going to be launching on a new platform, which will allow you to very easily on the spot download the PDF version of our presentation. So as of right now, we don't have that for you easily available. Next month, starting then, we will.
Awesome. Thank you, Justine. Okay, and the second question, I'm going to combine a couple of these. It looks like there was a few questions specifically about recovering outside of Unchained. And the first question was, if I spend or receive from my Unchained vault using Caravan or Sparrow, which doesn't reuse addresses, will my balance and transactions correctly display within Unchained's website? There's another question about sending or importing Unchained Vault into Blue Wallet, and if it's possible. I just wanted to clarify at a very high level that the wallet configuration file can rebuild your vault externally. It's not something that you would rebuild, interact with, and then move back over to Unchained. So you can do UTXO consolidations and change addresses, do certain things over in Caravan or Sparrow or these external multisig coordinators that will kind of break the interoperability between after you recover it and Unchained Capital. So you want to use the wallet config file as a, we refer to it sometimes as the doomsday file, or the scenario where you're going to export and move your Bitcoin, interact outside of Unchained from then on with that vault. So you don't want to rebuild your vault, be playing with it, transacting, and doing a lot, anticipating that next time you log into Unchained, those changes would be reflected within your Unchained vault. I'm not sure if either of you have anything else to add there, but this is almost a one-way street when you're recovering externally.
I would just add that it is something that will be improved in the future. And if you do want to test that the external recovery works, but you also don't want to cause an issue interacting with your Unchained vault, you can load the wallet configuration file into Caravan, and you can sign with both your keys to show that you have ability and just don't broadcast the transaction. So there is a way that you can test it without having an issue. And yes, soon that will be different on the vault standpoint. But yeah, that was it on my end. Perfect. All right. So yeah, I see a lot of great questions in there. Thank you guys for being so active in the chat. That's really what we're here for, are the questions. So got a couple more things that we're going to go over, and then we'll move into the live Q&A. The next section that I'm going to cover is key replacements within your Unchained account. So many of you may not even know that this is a thing, or may be confused of what it is. So I'm going to take a few minutes to kind of discuss what a key replacement is, and then we'll talk about how it works and how to do it. So in your multisig setup, it is a multisig consisting of 3 keys, 2 of which you hold. A key replacement is actually removing one of those keys and replacing with a completely different key. This fundamentally changes your address and the solution or the setup that you have. Something that happens behind the scenes you don't really see from the vault perspective is going to be a sweep transaction where everything changes and you now have a new setup. Now within your vault, it's going to look the same. You're still going to have the same vault name, but there's going to be a change there that actually occurs. Now, because this does change the whole entire setup of your vault, it's something that should only be used in specific cases. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So things that don't need a key replacement, I'm sorry, we'll talk about first. So if you've forgotten the PIN number to your Trezor device, you don't need to do a key replacement, right? You've just lost the PIN number. The great thing is that seed phrases, and this is why we keep them physically, can be imported back into that device. The Trezor actually lets you wipe the device and restore a wallet if you've forgotten the PIN. Some others work a little bit differently, but you can actually recover into a different device. Remember, this is the signing device. It holds your keys offline and lets you interact with them. This seed phrase, though, is your seed, right? It's your key, it's your backup. You can import that into another device. So if you've just simply lost the PIN number to your device, a key replacement is not necessarily needed. You just need to do a wallet recovery. If you've actually have a broken device, again, same thing. Don't need to do a key replacement there. If you've upgraded your device, if you want to maybe move from a Trezor to a Ledger or vice versa, you don't have to always do a key replacement. The reasons you want to do a key replacement would be you have lost access to the device and your seed phrases. You have lost the key entirely, or you feel it's been compromised. Perhaps you accidentally took a photo of your seed phrases because you didn't know any better. Maybe you think something's been tampered with, where perhaps you have now a compromised key. This is when you would want to do a key replacement. If you've lost complete access, cannot do a recovery, or feel that it's been compromised. So in those situations, you can walk through the platform and do a key replacement. So let's talk about what that is doing behind the scenes and under the hood, we shall say. So what we're actually doing in this setup is, if you think of your 2 of 3 multisig as a braid made of 3 strands, you actually can identify that, let's say key 3 here in red is the compromised key. Maybe you still have access to it. It's still in your possession, but you think that perhaps it's been compromised. What we want to do now is remove that key from our strands of braids and replace it with a whole new key. And as you can see on the diagram here, when you do that, it will actually change the address of your vault because you're doing a new setup specifically. Now, let's go through and actually look at how to do that and what it's going to look like. So because key replacements is sort of an intense process, I'm going to show you through these slideshows here specifically. So you're going to access your keys screen. You log into your account, left-hand side menu, you'll see keys, and you'll see the keys that you have uploaded onto your account. You're going to choose which key has been compromised. In this situation, I'm going to talk a little bit about as if I have the key. So let's say OWL is a compromised key. Perhaps I accidentally took a photo of it. Perhaps I saved it onto a Word doc and then learned later they should never be digital. They should always be physical. And now I just want to replace that key because I feel it's been compromised. So I'm going to go into that key specifically. I'll find it there on my keys menu and I'll select view. And then it's going to show me the screen here where I can do that key check that Tom just had shown us, or in the upper right-hand corner there, you see replace key. So if I select replace key, it's going to take me to a screen which is going to describe the process and give you a lot of warnings that this key will no longer be usable within the platform. So again, you don't want to do it unless you absolutely have to. You are then going to choose which key you'd like to replace it with. If you already have a key uploaded, you've already uploaded it previously and you're just replacing it with that, you can actually select it with the replacement key here. If you haven't, you're going to go through the process of uploading a new replacement key. Now, I want you to draw attention to this section at the bottom here. Can you sign? Now, this is going to change how this process takes place. If I have the OWL key and I just feel it's compromised, I have access to it. I can sign with it, right? I can sign with both of my keys. So I'm going to select the tab here that says I'm still able to sign using this key. Then when I select replace key, it's going to take me through the process of signing with each of those keys, which is going to do a sweep transaction and update it to the new key and the new address. But what if you don't have access to that key? What if OWL is missing? What if I don't know where it is? I'm going to deselect this. And what's going to happen is I'm actually performing a transaction where I'm signing with one of my keys that I have access to, and then I'm asking Unchained Capital to sign with their key. Now, anytime Unchained signs, which we're going to talk about a little bit here in a minute as well, there is a pretty intense security protocol built in, especially when it comes to replacing a key. So in this situation, you will most likely be asked to do a video verification. There will be a waiting period before Unchained Capital will sign, and we will go through a pretty intense security procedure before doing that signature, but it is an option. And this is one of the really good reasons that we suggest people do video verifications on file, which is something we talked about last month a little bit, the operational security practices. You can actually already have a video on file, and then we can confirm it against that. So that would be the process of actually doing it within our interface. Now, after you have replaced a key, you're still going to be able to see it on your keys menu, but it will no longer be usable in the platform going forward. You'll see it in red. It will say key cannot be used. And then if you clicked into the view section, you would see right here, it'll show you the name and also that the key was compromised and should not be used going forward. That's what it will look like after the fact with key replacement. Now, I know we kind of went through a decent chunk of stuff there that maybe some individuals are not familiar with. So just want to turn it over to David to see if there's any questions about key replacement specifically before we go into what it's like having Unchained sign a transaction itself.
Awesome. Thank you, Justine. And yes, as normal, we have gotten quite a few great questions. So we'll start with the one that's pretty easy to answer. And I think Justine did a really good job of touching on this in the last segment. But Andy asked if you have 2 of 3 multisig, could you lose one and be okay? So we've kind of covered that already, but Tom, if you want to take that and just give a high level on if you lose one of your keys, are you okay?
Yeah, definitely. If you lose one of your keys, that's the beauty of multi-signature wallets. So we're trying to remove all single points of failure. So unlike a single signature wallet, where if you lose that key, it might be impossible to recover your Bitcoin. With a multi-signature 2 out of 3 setup, you can have one of your keys be lost, stolen, or destroyed, and your Bitcoin is not at risk, and you can still use those other 2 keys in order to recover the Bitcoin.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Here is a question from, we'll just do 2 more here, and then we'll pop back over to the webinar and then wrap up by trying to knock all of these out. So David asks, do you need to do the key check if you have used the keys for a transaction, deposit or withdrawal in the last 90 days? Because the keys seem to reset every time you make a transaction. Justine, do you want to take that one?
That's a great question. As long as you're using that key actively, it's considered a key check every time you would use it there. So you're seeing that counter reset because every time you do sort of a transaction with it, it's checking that information, and therefore you won't need to do a key check. But if you haven't touched that key in a while, that's when you're going to start to get those reminders to do so. Great question, though.
Awesome. Thank you, Justine. Last one I will take before we continue is from Ken. This is a great question. If I don't plan to spend Bitcoin for many years, I'm guessing while recommended to do quarterly key checks, there isn't any reason I can't just check every year or later. And yeah, you're spot on. You're not required to do the key checks. It's something that we just highly recommend, because the devices, the hardware, could potentially break or stop working. So you want to every so often just check in on it, make sure that it's still working properly. You always want to make sure that the firmware is up to date as well. So if you're waiting a year or multiple years before checking, there could be a critical bug or something in the firmware, that a updated firmware patched that you might not be aware of. So highly recommend it. But if you did want to turn the key checks off, you can, if you're just using a regular client controlled personal vault. If you used something, one of our other services like a loan, you would need to keep those keys up to date with key checks every 90 days. So yes, you can even turn the key checks off if you'd like, but that's not something that we do recommend, because you want to make sure that the keys and the hardware are having those quarterly health checkups. So that's the last one I'll take right now. We do have about a dozen that we'll get to, but it's still unanswered. But let's go ahead and I'll toss it back over to Justine. You want to continue?
Perfect.
All right.
Yeah, so next we are going to go over what it actually looks like to ask Unchained Capital to sign a transaction. So let's say that you have one key super far away from you, maybe it's in a different state, and you want to actually perform a withdrawal where you're asking Unchained Capital to work as the backup signature. This is one of the beauties of collaborative custody, correct? So this is a service that you can ask Unchained to do, but how do you do that? So let's walk over to my demo vault here. Get that screen pushed over in this direction. And what you're going to notice is I'm on my main home screen. When you log into your Unchained Capital account, you're going to see access to all of the vaults here listed. This is a new demo account I've set up, so I just have one vault here. So we're going to go right into it and perform a withdrawal. So when I go into my main vault, this process looks exactly like doing a general withdrawal when you're using your two keys. You're just going to make one change along the way. So I'm going to select withdraw here, and it's going to ask, where do you want to send the funds to? Now, this is where you're going to get the deposit address from wherever you're sending the funds to. Perhaps it's another vault, perhaps it's a wallet that you use. You're going to grab the deposit address from wherever it is, which I have one saved on my clipboard here. Oh, or I don't. Let me go grab another one there. User error here. Give me just a moment, guys. Let's see. This is how you know it's live.
There's a timeout on the computer's clipboard.
There we go. All right.
Perfect.
So then it's going to ask me where, how much I want to send. So on this one, I'm just going to do max withdraw here. Again, this is a demo account. There's not much in here. I'm going to choose high priority because I don't want to wait. And I'm going to select next. Then it's going to ask, who do you want to sign for this transaction, right? This is where we're going to make the change. So it'll automatically be defaulted to your two keys. So whichever one I don't have readily available, I'm going to deselect, and then I'm going to select Unchained Capital to be the backup signature. Then I'm going to go forward with withdraw, just like normal. I'm going to confirm the information here and create the withdrawal. Then it's going to take me to the signature page. Now, we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but this is where you can do some really great things as far as confirming the change address. You can confirm the deposit address and just verify that everything's good to go before signing. Then I'm going to go through the process of signing with my key, which is a Trezor Model T named Cedar here. I'm going to select Trezor. And on my device, it's going to say not connected, tap to connect. So that's when I need to tap it and put in my PIN number that I've selected. So after I've unlocked the device, I then, on the computer screen, I'm going to do sign with Trezor. It's going to pop up that lovely Trezor bridge and ask me to give information to not only share the public address, but prepare the device for signing. I'm going to allow once for this session, and then I'm going to export. And then what's going to happen on my device is it's going to ask me to confirm that transaction. So this is a great time to kind of highlight the fact of how these devices work. Remember, it never shares your private keys. So what's happening is the wallet software is sending an unsigned transaction to the device itself, having you confirm it, and then signing with the private key it's securely holding. So you'll see there, it has my deposit address that I had inputted and how much I'm sending. So I'm going to confirm. It's going to confirm the transaction amount, and then I'm going to hold to confirm that transaction, which is signing with my key. After that's done, it's going to take me back here to the signing page. So I have signed with my Cedar key, And now we're going to be waiting for Unchained to sign with their key. How does that work? So in this process, it's good to keep in mind that there is at least a 24-hour time period here. Just like with a key replacement signature, there is a security protocol built in. You have joined a relationship with us to work as a backup key, and we will only sign as a backup when we verify that it's you requesting that signature. So sometimes there is a pretty intense security protocol built in, and steps that we take to ensure that it is you requesting that. As soon as Unchained Capital has signed the transaction, you will get an email stating that that signature is now done. They've signed. But what happens after that? Well, Unchained can't broadcast that transaction for you. Only you can broadcast that transaction because it's your vault and you're the one doing the withdrawal. So what's going to happen is when you come back into your vault, it is going to look a little bit different. And I'm going to show you here. Let's get back to this one. Give me just a second here, guys. Sorry, guys, here we go. All right, are we seeing the screen that says ready to broadcast now? Do you guys see that it's different? Unchained has now signed the transaction. So when you come into the vault, you'll see that signature has been done. And now you need to broadcast that transaction. Nothing in Bitcoin is final until you've signed with all keys necessary and broadcasted it. So at this point, you still have the ability to cancel this withdrawal, and it will not be processed until you broadcast it. So the method here again for Unchained to sign is you do a normal withdrawal. You sign with your key. A key request signature is sent to Unchained Capital. Expect about 24 hours for that to be processed. And then after it's processed, you will receive communication, but you need to come back into your account and broadcast the transaction. Once that's done, it'll be sent out to the network and processed as normal. And that is the process of asking Unchained Capital to sign. Any questions on that specifically? Otherwise, we can move right into the live Q&A because I know there are a ton of questions coming in. I see that chat box moving pretty quickly. So I'm going to turn it over to David, who's going to lead our live Q&A section.
All right. Thank you, Justine. And yes, we have a lot of great questions in the chat, a lot of great questions coming into the Q&A also. So I'm arranging these and trying to compile them like questions, put those together so we can knock them all out. Yeah, we're going to try and go through the questions first that are specific to keys checks, the things that we've been talking about specific to this webinar. So I know there's a lot of great questions about just all types of various things surrounding Unchained and Bitcoin and multisig, but we'll go through the keys first. If we have time, we'll wrap up with some of those excellent but less relative questions. All right, so here's a question from David. Is it possible for a bad actor to gain access to your Unchained account, replace all your existing keys to an active vault, and essentially take over the account by replacing all of the keys? So Justine, you just, I think, described it pretty well on why that's not possible, but if you want to just...
Absolutely. I think it's a great question. And it is kind of confusing because when you say key replacement, you're like, well, wait, if somebody can come in and replace the keys, how come someone who doesn't own this vault could do that? Well, the answer is that, as you noticed on my demo or display, was that you have to actually sign with the key you'd like to replace. And if you're not, then you have to ask Unchained to sign. And that's when that video verification and security protocol comes in. So there's no way somebody could just go in and change those things without either signing and having access to your keys as well as your vault sign-in, or somehow tricking Unchained Capital into doing so, which is near impossible to do. Again, we can only sign with one key, right? So they'd have to have access to another key as well. So while I totally understand the concern of that, it is something that there is a pretty intense security protocol built in, and they have to either have access to your keys or be able to verify their identity. Great question, though.
Awesome. Thank you, Justine. Okay, this is one from earlier, one of the first questions we got. So we are keeping track and wrapping back around to the beginning. But Simon asked, he had a really great question. How are the Unchained keys managed? So this would be the third key that we apply to a multisig quorum. So how are the Unchained keys managed? Are they cold storage private keys? Are they used across multiple users? How often are they given a health check? So at a high level, I don't want to dox our key setup.
Go ahead.
That's not something that we'll give the specifics to. But we, of course, every key that we use, we do have backed up in cold storage. We tell our clients to make sure that they have physical copies of their seed phrases, to make sure they do health checks on the physical devices themselves, make sure the firmware is always up to date. The things that we preach, we also practice. So we take security from client perspective and from our own key management very seriously. So I will loosely or at a high level answer those questions by saying yes, but without going into the specifics there. I don't know.
It's important to note too that like the way that Unchained signs a transaction is unknown on purpose. The only individuals within Unchained Capital who know that process are the ones who need to know that process. And there is let's say it's decentralized. So there is no one single point of failure within that. And it is the highest level of security within Unchained Capital. But yeah, great question. Just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, thank you. And the part of why I'm not doxing our setup is because I don't know it. I know from having conversations that we are doing the things that we are asking clients to do and encouraging clients to do, but I don't know where they are. So, all right, we'll go on to another question here. Let's see. We have a question from Lawrence. Can I make a withdrawal from my vault, both with my 2 keys or using Unchained Capital as one of the keys to one of my 2 client-controlled keys? So, Tom, I'll let you tackle this one. The question is, can I make a withdrawal from my multisig vault to one of my singlesig wallets, essentially? So if you want to touch on the specifics there, or the details.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, David. So yeah, you can use the keys that you have as a single signature wallet as well, in addition to the multi-signature wallet that you're using the key as a part of. And you can definitely generate an address for that single signature wallet, and you can send Bitcoin from your multi-signature vault into that single signature wallet that only one key is a part of. Now, since there's only one key as a part of that, it is considered less secure. There is more single points of failure involved with that kind of a setup, but it is possible to do.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. All right. Here's one that just came through that if you're paying attention to the slides, multiple people might have this question. So I'm going to go ahead and answer it quickly. Sterling asked, is the Bitcoin price locked in once you start the process of withdrawing, or is the price locked once the transaction is finalized? And he was asking because he saw the price went from 37K to 40K back to 37 while we were presenting. So you caught us, Sterling. Part of this was pre-recorded, not pre-recorded, but slides with a screenshot from yesterday when the price was 37K. So we are, I'm assuming the prices are around 40K. That's awesome. I think that's the Friday webinar bump is what we just got. But that's why you're seeing the price fluctuate. So all over the place is because we had some screenshots in there. Let's see. All right. Another great one came in from Matt. So hi, Unchained team. I understand if a pin is not working or forgotten, a key replacement is not necessary. But Justine mentioned that if a key is physically broken, a key replacement is not necessary. How is it possible to recover a broken key without replacing the key and using a seed phrase? So I think you answered your own question there as you got to the end. If a key is broken or a pin is forgotten or you can't access the hardware device itself, the last thing you said there, using a seed phrase, that's how you would restore a key. So the seed phrase, that's that human readable version of the private key, that mnemonic 12, 18, 24 word phrase, that is the seed phrase, that is what you would use to restore your key on a different hardware device. Or if you can wipe that first one that you couldn't get access to, you can then restore your private key to that device, meaning you'll be able to apply a signature then. So yeah, key replacement would not be necessary so long as you have that seed phrase, which is why we always stress as much as we can, keep a physical copy of that seed phrase so that when the device breaks or you forget a PIN, you can still regain access to that specific key. That was a great question, Matthew. All right, let's see. What do we have next? Jonathan asked, do you plan on supporting the ability to hide disabled keys and closed vaults from the UI? So Justine, do you want to take that one?
Jump in here. Yeah, so great question. Here's the thing that everything in Bitcoin is forever, right? So while you can disable a key on our platform or maybe stop using a vault, that address or key still exists out there. So we don't want to completely remove it. Now, what you will see coming up as we start to have some updates on our product itself is you'll see the ability to hide it a little bit better, because right now it is sort of like right there in your way, right? So there will be a way to sort of like hide those slightly where you can still access them, because you need to be able to access them. What if you sent Bitcoin to an old vault on accident, right? Still access them, but be a little prettier on the user interface standpoint. But great question for sure.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of good questions here. Just trying to organize these. So we got a question that is, I guess we can veer a little bit outside of the keys to some of the other stuff we touched on. It's a question about what is UTXO consolidation and why would I do it? That is from an anonymous attendee, great OPSEC, by the way, joining the webinar under the name Anon. Tom, do you want to talk on what a UTXO consolidation is and why that's something that someone would do or at least be aware of?
Sure, yeah. So a UTXO is an unspent transaction output. That's basically a fancy way of saying a deposit. So if you have a vault and you start sending a lot of deposits to that address that's associated with that vault, that can build up a bunch of UTXOs. And so what that means is that when you then go to make a withdrawal out of your vault, there's a lot of information built up from all those deposits that have been made. And if the information is at a certain threshold, it depends on the type of device that you have, but let's say around 20 to 30 UTXOs or deposits built up onto a single address, then your device can have trouble signing that because it's such a complicated transaction. So to get around that problem, basically we encourage clients to consolidate those UTXOs. And that's really just as simple as making some small withdrawal before you get to that 20 to 30 range of UTXOs on a single address. And what that will do is it's going to take all of those deposits and essentially consolidate them into one. So then your device will have an easier time signing in the future when you go to deposit.
Awesome.
Or withdraw, sorry.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Tom. All right, we're getting towards the end, so we've got some questions rapid firing in here. Justine, I saw you answer a couple in the Q&A, so thank you. Trying to answer as many live as we can. I think that it gives the most benefit to the viewers. We'll try to, let's see here. All right, Conrad had a question that just came in. Do I need to do a manual xpub backup of my hardware wallets, or is a seed backup all that is needed? All right, so great question. I'll answer this Unchained specific. So seed backup is what you need physically to restore the keys. So xpub backup for my hardware wallets, I think if I'm interpreting this correctly, we touched on the wallet configuration file earlier. So if you are generating a multi-signature wallet, the configuration file that you would download and store securely is what you're going to use to store the xpubs or the public key information along with derivation paths in one place so that you can recover access to that multi-sig wallet. Hardware wallets are backed up by the seed phrase, multi-sig wallet backed up by the wallet configuration file. I'm thinking that was your question. Hopefully that I answered that correctly, but okay, I got a thank you from Conrad, so I think that answered your question. Cool. Here's a great question from Mark. is there a fee to ask Unchained to sign? So Justine, if you want to take that one.
Yeah, for sure. And I did answer that in text because I know that the audience can see it there. But yes, totally agree that many of these we should answer as live as possible. So great question. You will notice in your Vault agreement that there is a $20 fee associated with asking Unchained Capital to sign. At this time, that is not implemented, but will be in the future. So as of right now, there is not a fee associated with it, but it is in your agreement because it will be implemented shortly in the future. But yeah, great question.
Awesome. Thank you. This one kind of carries over from that last question. It's a great question and an opportunity for us to talk about the benefits of Unchained, collaborative custody multisig specifically. Anonymous asked, does Unchained make any revenue off of the vaults that are that the customer has 2 of 3 keys? And then a comment, seems like a fantastic deal for us, the customers. So appreciate the comment. Yeah, we do not have any fees for a personal multi-signature vault. So it's something that we take the teaching and the educating of our clients about how to hold their own keys, generate keys, back them up, operational security, external recovery. We take that very seriously. That's the most important thing that we can do as a Bitcoin only company, is educate clients and just educate strangers through posting webinars and free content on YouTube, our blog, video webinars. That self-custody, proper self-custody, and backups are absolutely critical. So no, that's not something that we have maintenance fees on or that we charge for, because the mission is to create self-sovereign Bitcoiners that know how to hold their own keys. And that's the most important thing that we can do. Some of our other services are, there's fees associated with it, but specific to the 2 of 3 collaborative custody, no. All right, let's see here. We had 2 questions, and these are very good questions. 2 that are pretty much connected about why the deposit address for a vault doesn't change. From a privacy perspective, wondering why. Another question was, why can't we change addresses until a multisig transaction occurs? And there's some chat. I appreciate Bradley answered one of the questions in the chat. Go Bradley. But that's something that we're working on building out a kind of a new platform that's going to have a lot more functionality. This is what Justine talked about a little bit earlier, but right now we do have a static deposit address until you withdraw from the vault. That is something that will change in the future. It has not been a highly requested or prioritized piece of functionality in our vaults, but lately we've decided, and I would say over the past year or so, we've been building out the functionality for that to be possible. Justine, if you have anything else to add on that.
Yeah, I would say that, as far as how Bitcoin works, when you withdraw from an address, everything moves. I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about a change address too, because I see that I think Diane had a question about a change address. What a change address is when you move funds from one address to another, everything moves. An example of that would be, let's say I have $100 in a vault address, and I'm going to send 50 to Tom because he bought me some beer last week and it was really expensive beer, and I'm paying him back. And so when I send the $50 to Tom, my remaining change of $50 goes to another address under my keys control, and that's called a change address. In our user interface, you can double check that change address before you perform a transaction, which is great. But that's what a change address is, just another address under your keys control where your remaining change goes to. From a deposit standpoint, you have the ability to sort of force a new deposit address if you'd like one from a privacy standpoint, that you can go in and create a second vault and use that as a way to just force change that by sending a very small amount to your second vault. As David mentioned, it is something that will be updated in our platform, but as of right now, as long as you do an withdraw, the deposit address will change. It will not change before that, but you can kind of maneuver around that by just simply creating a second vault and doing a small transaction when you'd like to.
Awesome. Thank you, Justine. All right. So we're getting a lot of great comments coming in towards the end here. Very positive on Unchained in general. So I really appreciate that, everyone. Colin had a question that we could touch on very quickly about safe deposit boxes. Are they considered the best practice for keeping one wallet safe? Colin, I would highly recommend, if you haven't seen the operational security best practices webinar that we recorded last month, take a look at that. It's on our YouTube channel. We cover at a high level, if you have 1 secure location, 2, 3, 4 secure locations, where should you keep the devices? Where should you keep the backup seed phrases, and how you store the wallet configuration file? But absolutely, safe deposit box is going to be a secure location off-site from your home or office or trusted family member where you could store one piece of information. Yeah, that would be, I would say yes to that. You can keep one of your devices there, or you can keep one of your seed phrases there. Safe deposit box would be a positive place to store one of your pieces of information.
I wanted to jump in real quick, if you don't mind, David. I saw that Nathaniel had asked the question a couple times, and I feel like we touched on it earlier, but maybe we didn't hit the point that he was really asking. So I just want to kind of see if I can answer the question specifically, and Nathaniel, let me know if it does answer it for you. So when you start a withdrawal, the fee that you're choosing is at the time that you start the withdrawal, not when you broadcast it. So if you started a withdrawal and the fee significantly changes during that time, you may need to go back and cancel that transaction and redo a transaction. So just wanted to clarify that the transaction fee for broadcasting your transaction is decided when you create the withdrawal, not when you broadcast it. So when you actually go through the process of signing, you will see the estimated fee here of what you're signing. And you have the option to select that fee depending on the current traffic in the mempool. So just wanted to hit on that a little bit. Hope that answers your question a little bit more specifically.
Awesome. Thank you, Justine. Okay, let's see. With only having a few minutes left, we're not going to get through the questions again. This seems to happen every time, but there's so many good questions. It's just hard to get to them. Let's see if I can grab one more here. We've answered all the key questions, I believe. So I think I can wrap up the Q&A by answering Mel's question that just came through. Is there a consolidated list of all UC videos, or just scroll through YouTube? So we have a YouTube channel. All of these webinars and individual parts of the webinars that we think would be most beneficial for deposits, withdrawals, key checks, everything we covered today, operational security. We have smaller parts of those videos and webinars pulled out to answer very specific questions. So our channel is organized into different segments, webinars, tutorials, etc. So I would highly recommend, if you got a lot out of this webinar or previous webinars, go to our YouTube channel. Everything's recorded and posted there, and broken off into sections. So if you ever have questions directly, you can reach out to customer service, reach out to Unchained. But our YouTube channel is becoming a amazing set of resources for Bitcoiners and clients, non-clients alike, to go and get their learn on.
Another good option as well is if you're on unchained.com, you select resources, you'll see a knowledge base option. They do have a search function there. And so many times those knowledge bases will have a specific video or link to one. So that could be a good resource as well. But as David mentioned, all of these webinars are in the webinar segment of the YouTube channel, and there aren't too many in there. So it should be able to be pretty easy to find what you're looking for. But yeah, so, and we're constantly working on additional content. If you have not checked out the resources on unchained.com, you're missing out. Porter and our content team is on fire lately. So be sure you're checking that out, because all signal on Unchained resources.
Thank you, Justine. That's a great point. I can't believe I didn't call out Porter and our content team. And the Unchained Capital Twitter handle, or our Twitter account, is posting a lot of these pieces of content and these resources from our knowledge base. Absolutely give that a look too, because they're absolutely crushing it.
Awesome. So with that, I'm going to start to wrap up this webinar here. As I mentioned before, and for all those individuals that are about to email me, and ask me if this webinar was recorded. It was. We even have backup recordings to make sure we get that edited and sent out to our YouTube channel, hopefully by Monday or Tuesday next week. So make sure you're checking back for that if you happen to miss a portion or want to share it with your friends. This will be available on our YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed there. And if you aren't signed up for our newsletter yet, make sure you do so, because there are a lot of webinars happening right now. This continuing education webinar is the first Friday of every month at 11 a.m. Central Time. So mark your calendars. It will be next month, first Friday of the month. And you can always join the concierge team here to discuss some additional information to make sure that you are sovereign and confident in your Bitcoin custody. If you have not seen our retirement and inheritance webinar series yet, make sure you're checking that out as well, because Jeff and Connor are sharing with you all of the things you're curious about of your retirement in Bitcoin and how do you pass on this generational wealth from an inheritance standpoint. So make sure you are signed up so you are not missing this information. Otherwise, I just want to thank David and Tom for being here today. This was phenomenal. You guys always have amazing questions. So thank you for showing up and making this Q&A section exactly what we want it to be, very interactive, and can kind of try to help answer those questions on a one-on-one basis. So thank you so much for joining us, guys. This is your continuing education webinar series from Unchained Capital, and we will see you next month.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.